Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. I'm your host. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. Before I introduce my guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast. It's called A Gift from Adversity by Juri Love. It's available on Amazon, and the subtitle is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. This was published in 2020, and after I published my book, I got a lot of comments and people reaching out to me and then told me that they're also a victim of child sex abuse, domestic violence, etc. After I heard a lot of stories, personal stories, I felt very compelled to create this podcast, to create a platform where people can share their adversities. And I'm very, very grateful so far that I've had so many guests from all over the world. And today we have a first guest from New Zealand. I'm very excited to have him. His name is Wayne Forrest. Wayne, thank you so much for coming here tonight from New Zealand, I heard.
Thank you for having me, Juri.
Great. So can you tell our audience who you are, where you are exactly, and then what you do?
So, like I said, my name's Wayne Forrest. I like to joke that it's run Forrest, considering I'm in a wheelchair. So I thought that's quite a nice little play. Uh, and I live in New Zealand. I come from a farming background originally. I grew up on a farm here in New Zealand, out on the coast, a little place called Hawke's Bay. And yeah, and that's where I come from.
Awesome. Do you have any social media page, handle, or Facebook page that you're promoting where people can find more about your work?
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel, Wayne Forrest Coaching, and I've also got a website, wayneforrest.com. Forrest is two R's, not just the one. And I'm on Instagram, but you can find all those links on my YouTube channel.
What are the content of YouTube channel?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
What are the contents of YouTube channel? What is your YouTube channel?
Well, my message, Juri, is connecting to your inner warrior. I believe that we have two sides to our nature. We've got the human side, which is patterned by our upbringing and everything that's happened to us in this experience. But then we've got the spiritual side, and this spiritual side is abundant, it's whole, and it's connected to the universe. And so my message is that if we connect to that side of our nature, we not just heal ourselves, but we can actually thrive and create lives that we love.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So let's dive into our first question, which is adversity. Can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Yeah, I've mentioned it once with a joke around Forrest, run, Forrest, run. I was playing sport growing up, and I had two loves, farming and sports. So I was very physical sort of a person. And I was playing rugby for a local club, actually captain of the day. And I made a mistake right at the end of the game where I put myself in danger and I dislocated my neck. Um, and I couldn't move anything. I couldn't breathe properly. Uh, I was lying on a wet ground for about an hour and a half before an emergency helicopter came. And they took me to hospital. I ended up having to fly to another hospital, and it took about nearly 2 days to get seen by an expert. And I couldn't move anything. I woke up after that trauma, and was like, wow, I couldn't move my hands, couldn't move my feet. I was stuck in a bed upside down pretty much, and had to rely on nurses to feed me, take me to the toilet, all those kind of things. And it was quite shameful at the time, because I was this supposedly big, tough country boy that was physical in sport and his job. And all of a sudden, that side of me was gone. And I was like, wow, uh, I felt those feelings of I'm not a very good dad. I had two twin daughters at the time of 16 months. Um, I was married. How am I going to be a good husband? How am I going to survive this? And uh, I had to reinvent myself. And it took a while for me to heal those feelings. And it took me on a journey. It's now been 27 years after that accident. The accident happened to me when I was 25. Um, so I was quite a young man. And I had lived a lot of life up until that point. I traveled around the world and done a lot of things, and obviously married and having kids. But all of a sudden, my whole world ended. So, yeah, how was I going to reinvent myself? So, the first thing I realized lying in that bed was I have to at least give my first love a try, and that was farming. So that was the first critical moment that started me on this journey. After that was going back to my farm and um, running that again, and I couldn't. It took me a lot of time. It took me at least a couple of years to get strong enough to transfer and to drive again. And so I had a lot of challenges along the way, but by having that vision, it really pulled me towards getting more independent, and because I had a goal to strive for.
First of all, thank you very much for sharing your story. It's very important that we are able to have this conversation globally and be able to like shared experience. And I'm very sorry that happened to you when you are such a young age at 25, and then with the girls that's so young and so much potential. And I just feel like scared, like, I don't know what I would have done, I would do. So you are saying you were playing rugby when the injury happened. So when you got hit or injured, did you have a realization how bad it was, or was just like you didn't realize how bad it was?
Oh, well, I can take you through that moment. I don't have any attachment to the feelings like I used to. And, so I had the ball and I took it into contact with two people, and those two people tried to rip the ball off me, which is part of the rugby game. And what happened was I realized that they had the upper hand and I was going to lose the ball. So I decided that that wasn't going to happen, and I put myself in danger by throwing my body into a position that um, just a whole lot of circumstances all lined at once, and I got hit from behind as well, and that just pushed my momentum and my weight over onto my head, and that split second of things all aligning just put me in a place where my neck dislocated. And I knew straight away. It felt like a hot poker had been jammed straight into the back of my neck, and the pain was incredible. I couldn't breathe. My lungs collapsed, like because the neck injury affected my chest muscles. So all of a sudden, I was curled up in a ball and I couldn't breathe. And yeah, it was it's quite a journey at that moment, of, oh wow, I'm really in trouble. And I can remember yelling out, help, help, please someone help me. And of course no one could hear me because I had no wind in my lungs. And it was, everyone got off me and looked at me and realized, wow, I think he's injured. So that's when everyone sort of stopped the game and radioed for help. And I remember lying, which was probably the wrong thing to do, but I was lying in a friend's lap and she was holding my neck and trying to stabilize me. And she was really helpful, actually. We were talking about childbirth and other things that were painful because I was in so much pain. But that's just some memories coming back by telling the story. So yeah, it was a pretty tough moment in my life, and it's interesting because I can look back now, 27 years, and I'm actually grateful for that experience. I know that might sound strange, but I needed I needed that adversity to actually bring me to where I am today. And what I do today, helping people connect with their inner warrior, is such an awesome feeling. I feel honored and blessed to help other people discover the power in them because of what I've overcome, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Wayne. Let's save that part for the later questions. But so I wanna go back to dissect a little bit about your injury. So you got airlifted, and then the first hospital they couldn't treat you, so they have to airlift again to another hospital. Your life must be such a high risk at that point with everything that's going in your body. Do you recall, oh my God, am I gonna make it? Like, do you recall a fear, like when you are, I don't know if you remember being airlifted hospital, did you have that kind of conscious and mindset?
Mm. I definitely remember some parts, Juri. Um, I uh, when the helicopter arrived, so the doctor on the helicopter gave me some medicine and I passed out, uh, which they do for the pain. And so it was very groggy, but I can remember waking up in the first hospital being totally naked uh, and feeling cold upside down. They had me on one of those beds that tip you upside down so you don't put too much pressure on your skin. And then I remember waking up again at some stage when they were taking me out to the next helicopter to take me to the next hospital. And I was in a cocoon of warm air to stop me from going hypothermic because obviously a helicopter doesn't have that control over the heat, and they were worried for my life. Um, Obviously, I wasn't aware of it, but that helicopter driver actually saved my life because the bag I was in had a leak. And he said, I'm not taking him anywhere until you swap the bags. And that decision actually saved my life because I actually ended up with pneumonia for the 5 days after my injury. And of course, not being able to breathe properly, you can imagine how dangerous that could have been. So there was lots of moments there that were life threatening. And when I got to the second hospital, they put me straight into surgery, and I was given like a 10% chance of living. To my family, that's what they told my family, that there was a lot of touch and go. I wasn't totally aware of all those things, but that were some of the things that I was going through at that time.
That is just so incredible. And I've never talked to somebody who had that much of injury and then be able to survive airlifted. So I really appreciate you sharing this adversity with me and with our audience today. And I do have a friend that I met that I went to Berkeley College of Music that he had a bike accident in Japan at like age 20, and then he's paralyzed waist down, but he graduated from Berkeley, plays guitar, sings and everything, and then gained independency. But he said it took a while for him to learn the independency. So how long do you say after the injury and being able to get better to gain some sort of independency?
Wow, what a great question. And it's an individual road, I think, for everybody. And for me, it took 6 months for me to get out of hospital, right? And I I need to go back a little step, and that was that in the early days of me being in this accident, a doctor came and saw me, and he said to me, "Do you realize you're not going to walk again?" First of all, that was a kick in the guts. It was just like, whoa. Even though I consciously kind of knew that I was in trouble in that aspect, it was still a real big punch in the guts. And and then um, and then they told me that I would never push out of that hospital in a manual wheelchair. Um, I would probably be in an electric wheelchair. And I want to say to the listeners, be very careful what you take on as a belief. Because the second one, I was a I had enough in me to say, right, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I've been in a manual chair ever since, and I've pushed myself around, right? Instead of being in an electric wheelchair. And I know enough now, 27 years later, that that belief that someone says that you can't walk or you can't create something, if there's even the slightest little bit of possibility, aim for that possibility. I don't care if it's only 0.00 of 1%. You go for that 0.001% because you'll be surprised what you can achieve. Because it took me many years to get where I am with that understanding. And if I can give someone that understanding now, please take on that possibility and not someone's belief. Uh, and because I've widened that, my possibility has got bigger, right? And I'm growing into that possibility all the time now because I've changed my mindset. But to answer your question, I progressed a little bit there. But to answer your question, it took me 6 months to get out of that hospital. It took then another 2 years to get strong enough to transfer and to drive again. And then it took me probably about 4 years for my body to get used to being in a wheelchair and my accident. And yeah, and then it sort of progressed from there.
Well, thank you. So right now, after 27 years from the initial accident, what is your limitation as of today?
Ooh. Now, do I live? I limitation. I love that question. Yeah, I'm learning to live into the possibility and not the limitation. Yet, the facts are that I still have limitations. My hands are affected. Um, I still cannot walk yet. I'm going to hold that one day I can, um, and I'm learning to live into that possibility. I do everything. I've done all sorts of things. I've scuba dived with sharks. I've water skied. I've paraglided, abseiled down cliffs. I've whitewater rafted. So nothing stops me with those limitations. And that's, that's my message with the inner warrior too, is that there's a strength, there's always a way. Um, if we can find the right question, we can find the right answer. So I'm a great believer in yes, you have to work with the facts, but always keep in mind and ask that question: what is that possibility for yourself?
Sure. Have you done Paralympics? Have you done Olympic?
No, I haven't done Paralympics or anything. I went down the other way. I sort of lived in the country and a long way away from sports teams and things like that. So, uh, especially wheelchair teams. So I immersed myself back into farming and a lot of the other lifestyle things that go with living out of town in the country.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I want to move to our next question, which is the tools that you use to overcome. You kind of mentioned a little bit, but I want you to focus on the things that really, really worked for your adversity. And before you answer your question, I love this part of the podcast because every single that guest that I had really creative ways to overcome, different ways to overcome, rather than traditionally, okay, you need to get a therapist, you need to see a counselor, and then sometimes more like waitlist since 2019. And then sometimes, finding a right counselor is really tough. So this part of the podcast and the reason why I wanted to start this podcast, Wayne, is I'm a survivor of child sex abuse, domestic violence, homelessness, all this stuff that I was growing up in Japan. And then those tools were not available. I was not told that I had a PTSD or this was called child sex abuse until I was 22.
Mm.
No idea. Therefore, all the teenage years that I had struggled of my self-esteem, mental health was never addressed. So I'm 45 now. I'm doing the podcast, and I appreciate every single guest who came to the show, whether all sorts of different adversities, from ranging from abuse, injury, sickness, miscarriage, drug abuse, all sorts of stuff. But every guest has strengths and resilience to bring out creative way to overcome, and the tools that you used that they shared on this podcast that I love because I believe in resilience and creativity to overcome these things. So, what would you say the best tools that you use to overcome your injury and adversity?
First of all, is connecting with your why. It's that purpose. And how do we find that purpose? There's a question that we can ask ourselves, and that is, what would I love? what would I truly love from the heart, and create a vision around that of who we are. Like I said before, we have two sides of our nature. We have a spiritual side to our nature, and when we ask ourselves questions, those kind of questions, and if we listen, there's what I love to call the inner warrior, or the inner goddess in each one of us, right? And that will be answered by that inner goddess or inner warrior. And sometimes it's very scary because we don't know how to get there, right? But we don't worry about the how. We actually just want to connect to what it is that is trying to come out of our hearts. And normally it's some sort of service to humanity. It's often the challenges that we've had, right, or overcome. We want to help other people with it. That's why I do what I do. Is, I've had all these challenges in my life, and I want to help people get to that wholeness, or that abundance in their life, so they can have a beautiful life that they love, right, despite the challenges. And so that is the most important question, is what would I love? So you can keep asking yourself that question. So what would Juri love? If everything, if there was nothing in the way, if money wasn't a problem, if time wasn't a problem, or there was nothing in the way of that question, what would you love? And there's something bubbly. I can see it on your face, right? There's something that lights her up, and I'm sure your audience will see that, the way that your face lit up. Whatever that is, write it down and become the person in that vision, and make a nice clear vision. And you'll be surprised how that vision, if you visit it daily, maybe twice a day, and light yourself up every time, you'll be surprised how that pulls you and pushes you to what you are truly meant to do in this world. And I would say the book was probably part of that, and your podcast was part of that. It's taking you on a journey. So that's I just know that each one that has gone through adversity, that experience is for you, through you, to pull and push you to what you're truly here to do.
Or would you say, maybe I'll save that question, but so was there any coach or like a counselor who guide you that, or you kind of self-discovered that theory and the method to overcome?
Well, this journey has taken me down self-development. Um, so the journey, first of all, I went from farming to extreme outdoor activities, and it grew me because I had to face fears. And that sort of, what I loved about that was I was naturally helping other people on those courses, to see that they were capable of much more than they thought. And it really helped me feel better about myself, right? So that was one key, is that helping others with the same pain points often helps us heal and feel better about ourselves. And then from there, I didn't have any counselors or anything like that. I went into self-development. So I ended up with coaches and courses, and so I've been on that road for at least the last 7 years, um, discovering what it is makes me tick. And I've had guidance of some really good mentors in my life, um, like Mary Morrissey, the Boggs family, which is part of the Brave Thinking Institute. Um, there's been others as well. There's been Dean Graciosis and Tony Robbins, and there's books as well that I've read that I love because I've uh, created an awareness of who I truly am and who that inner warrior is in me. Um, a good book, The Course of Miracles Made Easy. There's Chopra, Dr. Chopra. There's a number of people, Dr. Joe Dispenza. They all talk about how we can use this to change our reality.
That's incredible. Would you say to the doctor that you mentioned earlier that you're gonna go only with the electric wheelchair, but now look at you, so many activities and then so many independency. What do you think the doctor would say now, looking at you and then what you have accomplished?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put him down because, um, he didn't know any better at the end of the day. But I would like to educate him some way where uh, just to broaden his awareness that what is possible if we don't think it's impossible. Um, and I think that's the biggest lesson is we're here to help people grow. We all are, even those that are broken or feel broken because you're not broken, right? You've got you're broken, I believe, because you can help heal so many others uh, through your journey, and and that's how I see that doctor. I just want to help him grow his awareness so he can help others grow into the possibility and not the negative or the limitation.
Wait, I want to share my personal story with you and also with our audience. I've been suffering with my thyroid disease. I had a surgery when I was 20. It's in my book. Very awful surgery to take off the thyroid, open neck, local anesthesia. I was fully aware because they had to find out the vocal cord. That's back in Japan. And after that was okay. Then after my son was born, I was told that I have hypothyroid disease, which I had hyper in my 20s. Then I have to stay on a medication for the rest of my life. And my TSH was regular is 4, but it was 16. And she said I would not have kids. My hair was gonna fall off, like skin, all sorts of disease, heart failure, scary things.
Mm.
And I said no. I said I'm gonna find some other way to cure myself, and I don't want to be on a medication for the rest of my life. I refuse to hear that. So I changed my doctor, and this is a true story. I found alternative way to fix it, which was nutrition responding testing, where I saw this practitioner, and she checked everything that went to my mouth and changed my diet. 14 months later, my TSH was 4. Now I have to. It was stabilized, and then I have my daughter that you just saw earlier with no medication, zero, nothing. Where I was told I have to be on medication for the rest of my life, probably in 2013, but it's 2022. So over 10 years, I haven't had medication. Now, after the COVID vaccination, my TSH went up to 126 from 4. And they have to put me on a medication. And then it went down. And I talked to the endocrinologist and I said, I suspect it's COVID vaccine side effect. And he said, I actually read a paper about thyroidism which is the inflammation of the thyroid. So he was very great because I advocate for my story and then side. So can I start taking it half? So then it went down. So can I take it off completely? So I took it off, but it went up to 9, which is like 5 points up. But I said it's not 126. Can I still take it off? I'm very stubborn. But now I'm due another blood test in 4 months, but I'm completely cutting sugar off, no sugar. So see how it works. So what I'm saying relating to you is sometimes obviously doctor's great, medicine's great, and I'm grateful for this access that we can have this access to medication and then all the surgeries and stuff. But at the same time, there's a completely different aspect from Eastern medicine. And I'm from Japan, and acupuncture, yoga, like India, like, there's so many things that you can apply. So my life experience, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but using my body as an example and you as an example, sometimes when Western medicine perspective applies to you, they're right. But when the Eastern medicine and the perspective talks to you and then intuitively that aligns with you, I have to say you have to go for it because it's not just one way of looking at a condition. And I'm a Reiki practitioner as well. And then I feel you need to, like what you said, the mindset as well. You like to think possibility instead of limitation. I like that. And I feel a little bit stubbornness, but also the research that you can do on your own, talking to friends who had the same situation, listening to this kind of podcast. I think overall, with the internet especially, we have so much information available to us, but it's up to us to believe in our recovery and then potential, like you said. So I just wanted to share.
Well, I love that. And there's a couple of things that I love what you said was that intuition, that gut sense, right? And I I'm no doctor either. I've got no doctorate. I've just got my experience, and I can only talk from that level. But with my experience, uh, I love the idea of the science behind it. And quantum physics says that everything is 99.9999% space. Everything. Concrete, us, trees, the houses we live in, everything is 99.99% space. Right? How does that work? Well, they all vibrate different vibrations, right? And you're talking about energy, with your with the traditional medicines of um, the Eastern and Japanese medicines. Uh, they are all energy, moving energy around, right? So this whole experience is just different vibrations of energy. And to make this real, right here, right now, there is vibrations or uh, frequencies for radio. There's a radio show right here if we have the right tool to tune into that. There's TV channels here if we have the TV to tune into those TV channels. So there's vibrations all around us, and we are vibrating. That has to be intelligence, right? That has to be really amazing intelligence. So when we can understand the science that's coming out, then we can start to think about using those intuitions or inner warrior that I like to say to help us, guide us to the truth. And normally, when we have elements or things happening to us, it's all started from the vibration that we've put out at some stage. Like our thoughts create this ease. That's where dis-ease came from, is the idea of your mind is at dis-ease, which creates disease, right? So when you start to dive into, I love um, um, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about all these different ways of through meditation and how we can change our reality and heal. Um, so I just wanted to share that because it was down the lines of what you were saying, Juri, and yeah, it just felt like it was at me here.
I really appreciate you understanding where I'm coming from, and then what you had experienced, that you are in New Zealand. I grew up in Japan, now in America, but this conversation is global and universal. And I think we can take these lessons to any humankind on this earth. My last question is a gift that came from your adversity. So, what would you say? You kind of mentioned it earlier, but if you can repeat and then tell our audience what's the gift that came from the adversity?
There were so many, Juri. I don't know where to start. I know I've mentioned lots of different gifts, but the gift is the journey. It's who I've become. Right, that's the biggest gift is by being curious. Be curious, and don't take on anyone's belief. Don't take on my belief. Be curious about your own beliefs because our beliefs are often patterned from our childhood. All right. And if we question everything, then you're going to come to your own truth. And that is powerful because I know that each one of you out there struggling with some sort of adversity, you are so much greater than anything that you're dealing with. So that's my message.
Well, thank you so much, Wayne. Now, before you leave the podcast, I want you to think about somebody who is now going through what you went through 27 years ago. What's the biggest advice that you can give?
Doesn't matter what the percentage is, create a vision around the possibility. Doesn't matter if it's 0.00001 of a percent. Create a vision around that possibility, and you'll be surprised what you live into.
Well, thank you so much for coming to A Gift from Adversity. Do you have anything that you want to say before you leave?
Just know that each one of you is a inner goddess or inner warrior. You can call it whatever name resonates with you, but there's a power inside of each one of you that is far greater than any circumstance, situation, or condition. So just always remember that. And if you're having trouble remember it, trust in my belief because I know that.
Very powerful. Well, thank you so much again, Wayne, for coming to A Gift from Adversity and then being a part of this conversation today, all the way from New Zealand. Before you leave, I just want to mention I've never been to New Zealand, but I do have a pen pal from New Zealand. Since I was 14 in Japan, we exchanged many letters, and now we're on Facebook friends. So I really want to visit someday. So I just want to let you know I have a big love for your country.
Well, thank you. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Juri.
Absolutely. And thank you for our audience listening to A Gift from Adversity. I have wonderful guests coming up, coming months. I'm very grateful. And we look forward to more shows and have a wonderful night.